We are moms who are pouring ourselves into our children every hour of every day. We are grandmothers who are also playing the role of primary caretaker. We are moms who are waiting to have children and trying our best to see the struggle through the eyes of God. We are moms who are learning the challenges of a blended family. We are moms in the workplace who are trying our best to balance competing expectations and demands. We are moms with adult children who are leaving our homes to pursue their own dreams. For packing lunches late at night. For cleaning out their backpacks, then filling them again. For offering gentle guidance to your own grown children. For becoming taxi drivers and appointment schedulers. For making sure the right baby doll is in their arms before they go to sleep. For helping them pay back their student loans. For cleaning and sterilizing and cooking. For doing their laundry and his laundry and our laundry. For praying and loving and forgiving and falling down and rising to your feet again. For the mom who is overworked and exhausted. For the mom who seems to spend 1,000,000 hours on 1,000,000 little things. For the mom who pours Jesus into her family as best she can. And God himself not only celebrates what you do, but rejoices over the uniqueness of who you are. You are seen, and you are loved without limits. Welcome to Mother's Day.
Oh, happy Mother's Day. I do like that ending line like it's a ride. Welcome to Mother's Day. The ride, that's good, that's good. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. I remember a story about my mom. I think I was 13, 14, somewhere in that time, that age gap, 8th, 9th grade, something like that. Really into girls and all that, and the carnival came to town. Carnivals come to town with those games that are rigged and all the food that makes you sick and all that stuff. So the rides you're worried about. And they had a tilt-a-whirl. You know what a tilt-a-whirl is? That kind of a red thing, like a little bucket you sit back into, and it just spins as it's spinning like this. And we're going around this thing, but before we get on, I'm like, hey, Mom, you want to ride this? She and I are hanging out. And I'm a pretty cool son, right? 13-year-old hanging out with his mom. So we're hanging out, just having a good time. I'm like, are you sure you want to ride this? She's like, oh, yeah, I'll be fine. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, all right, well, let's go ride this tilt-a-whirl. So we get up, we get on the thing, dude buckles us in and all that, and it starts spinning, and it's tame, and then it really gets going. And then I'm having the, time of my life. It's really fun and everything. And also looking at across there, Michelle, sorry about this, also looking across the thing at this other girl, and that's why I wanted to ride it. So we're sitting in this bucket, and we're spinning around and all this, and then all of a sudden I hear this voice, and it's getting louder and louder, and then it's screaming, and then I realize it's coming from right beside of me, and the words are, stop this ride right now, stop this ride and let me off. And in a moment, I don't know, of just exasperation, or it was just a glitch in the matrix, I have no idea, but this dude did something that I can't imagine a dude doing. He stopped the ride. He comes over to us, unbuckles us, lifts the bar, and then we have to walk this walk of shame in front of this girl off of the ride. And as soon as we're off, it starts right back up again. So, happy Mother's Day, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. So it's so good here, and I know this day can be a little bit tricky, but here's what I want us to do. There's a story in the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, and it's in 1 Samuel. You probably know Samuel from the prophet Samuel, but his mom is this really strong woman. And one thing I've learned being here a year, and Bob asked me to clarify something. Spencer, I think you had said something about it's been a year since the elders voted me in, right? If I remember correctly, it was a unanimous congregational vote. Yeah, so just for clarity. So One thing I've learned over the past year is that we have some very strong women here. Women who aren't afraid of ministry, aren't afraid to do the will of God and the work of God. And I applaud you, and I think we're all better from it. And if we dip into the story and you just read some of the contextual stuff that's happening, there's a few moves that Hannah makes that speaks to moms, to women, to every single one of us and will help us become better. And it's a very strong woman of the Bible who will help us work some stuff out. It's just a fantastic story. So when you open the First Samuel, you see this gal. She's in this very troublesome relationship with her family. She has a husband who loves her, but she just can't have children at the time. So there's this other lady in the picture who's very antagonistic toward her because of this. And it's just wrecking Hannah. She's having a really hard time. And before we get into the text, what we're going to see is that there's just a couple of qualities, I've been calling them, that I see here. And it's what led me to this passage. You know, praying up, what do you say on Mother's Day? And you've got a dude speaking on Mother's Day. What do you really say? So just thinking about all of our people here. And the story of Hannah, I just couldn't walk away from it. So I'm reading through this. I'm like, there's a couple of qualities here that are applicable to every single one of us. And the first one you're going to see with Hannah is the quality of self-leadership, where she takes full responsibility for herself, regardless of the behavior of other people, regardless of what's going on. Even in the internal adversity that's swelling up within her, she takes personal responsibility for how she's processing her life, how she's thinking through things, and then her personal behavior. It's beautiful. So when we step into the story with that antagonism going on, we read these words, in bitterness of soul. And that's an attention getter, isn't it? In bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much. And it's not lost on me that that statement doesn't stop there. There's a conjunction. And she prayed. And she prayed. So in bitterness of soul, she's able to self-regulate, get things going so that she can tune herself toward heaven and pray and call out to her God and sort things out His way and in His timing. Is that amazing or what? You know, one of the quotes that we use quite frequently around here at Madison Hills comes from a guy named Henry Cloud, and he's responsible for writing all those books on boundaries and self-leadership and personal responsibility. And he says, you are not always responsible. And if you're a very good student of the Bible, you'll read through 1 Samuel and see, oh, this is clear. This really isn't her fault. But if you are not always responsible for what happens to you, and some of you could amen that. Some stuff has come into your life, and you're not responsible for it. And unfortunately, it's hurt you. It's been harmful. Maybe it's shamed you. And you're like, what do I do with this? So you're not always responsible with what or for what happens to you. However, you are always responsible for what you do with what happens to you. So I love that phrase, in bitterness of soul, she's weeping much. And she prayed. So this idea of personal responsibility, self-leadership, when you and I are responsible for what's going on in our world, you and I become response able. We're able to make a really wise, regulated response to the conditions of our lives. Isn't that a beautiful dynamic? So you become response able. You take responsibility for what's going on in your life and what you can control. Do you love that? And that's what's going on with Hannah. It's an amazing story. Quality number 2, thinking about this, self-leadership. But not just self-leadership over time. Self-leadership over time. And I don't mean over time like, hey, you punched your 40 hours, now you added 10 more onto it. No, it's like this continuous thread of how you're navigating life. You're into this. And what's the precursor for her to be able to do this over time is, I think, a verse we look at in the New Testament. We see Peter really wrapping his mind around this for himself and for the church, where he says, and I think if you're like me, I usually get these out of order. But Peter says, be alert and self-controlled so that you can pray. Now, David Green thinks, wait a minute, I'm going to pray to be alert, and I'm going to pray to be self-controlled. But Peter says there's some wisdom in making sure you're demonstrating self-leadership and taking personal responsibility for your life so that you're alert, so that you're self-controlled. Because if you're not, life's going to knock you off balance, and then what's going to happen? You're going to react to it. So you want to demonstrate alertness and self-control so that you can pray. And when you pray, you're praying some of your best prayers. You're praying some of the prayers where you're really sorting this stuff out. And you're not just talking, you're listening. You're really allowing the ways of God and his purposes to permeate what's going on in your life so that you are response able. So quality number 2 is self-leadership over time. So the text in 1 Samuel goes on and it says, in the course of time. So Hannah has a few hiccups where she's praying about the condition that she's in. She's praying about her feelings. She's praying about her future. And some guy sees her and he's like, hey, what's going on with you? And she's like, I'm praying and I'm sorting through this. And then the text tells us, in the course of time. In the course of time, Hannah was able to have a child. But it's in the course of time that catches my attention. Now, I don't know about you, but when you've got difficulty going on, it can be small, it can be large, whatever it is. Do you know how you react to those things? Especially if it's, I guess, small stuff, because the small stuff compounds and adds up. And it's less like you're angry, and it's more like you're just agitated or frustrated. So in preparation for this, I was sorting through some notes, and I come across this detailed list of things that we went over in a family meeting. We used to have these family meetings regularly, once a month, especially when the children were smaller, and they were starting to get their own voice and walking through life. And I come across these notes, and the prompt for everybody in our family was simply this: when you feel upset, what do you do? Now, this is interesting. I'd love for you to poll our family and see if anything's changed, because I hope in the course of time, some stuff has changed and we've evolved or emerged differently, or we've grown or we've developed or whatever. But I'm going through this list, and I said, for me, when I get frustrated, I nitpick. Does anybody else do that? And I bet my family feels that too. When I'm frustrated, I really pay attention to the details. I really laser focus in. Michelle wrote that she cleans. Does anybody else clean when you're angry or frustrated or upset? So when I read that, I was like, oh, boom, perfect. So I try to upset her about once a week, get her rolling, get her going and everything. Then Christian said, I try to butter people up. If I'm frustrated, they're frustrated, it's a tense thing, I'm just going to butter people up and just make the best of it. And then Sophie said, well, I'm going to run to my room and roll my eyes. And where is she? Because I don't think she runs to her room anymore, but she still rolls her eyes, okay? And then Bella said, I'm going to scream and run to my room. So I hope, because that's about 6-7 years old, I hope we've grown out of some of that stuff. But in the course of time, now, the text doesn't tell us how much time elapsed from when Hannah was praying and crying out to our God in that bitterness of soul and praying to him. The text doesn't tell us how much time elapsed, but there is some Jewish writings that suggest that it could have been upwards of around 19 years. And if you've been a follower of Jesus for any significant amount of time, you know that he often operates on a different time frame than you and I do. That's where we get into the ideas of faith and integrity and character and persevering and moving forward despite what's going on. And even if it looks like nothing's going to change, and not only is it not changing, it's actually getting just a little bit worse. So in the course of time, or over 19 years, she's still dealing with this. So she demonstrates self-leadership over time. Now, it's not lost on me, and I know that today is a mixture of meaning for a lot of people. It's comforting and it's conflicting. I think back to my own family and the struggle that Michelle and I had to even start being able to produce children. I think about a miscarriage that came our way, and I think about all the challenges that we faced with a blended family. And maybe that's applicable to you. And I know it's applicable to a lot of people. So we've been talking about this way where we can help with when people are expanding their family and it's a difficult time. And things aren't going the way that they had planned for it. Or there's questions or there's concerns. So that's one of the reasons we drop some change and some bills into these bottles and we fill them up and we kick it off on Mother's Day, because there's a lot of people, and maybe it's applicable to you here this morning. And there's some people in our community who are going to be, over the course of time, some stuff isn't changing. And over this course of time, there's some other stuff popping up, and this is really hard, and it's difficult, and it's challenging, and I don't understand. This is a small way where we can come alongside of them and say, we're going to support. We're going to help support you. We're going to help support the good work going at the pregnancy center. We're going to help support you during this difficult time. We're going to work with you. We're going to serve our community. So we have these out in the lobby, and you just take one. You'll bring this back on Father's Day, and I know you've already heard this, but you'll bring this back on Father's Day. I bet we can fill every single one of these bad boys up. And there's a lot out there. I think we have 100 total. But I bet we can fill every single one of them up with change and bills. And you may never know the difference that this makes, but you will be making a huge difference in someone's life, just like this story, in the course of time. And who knows how long somebody that's going to get some help at this center, who knows how long they've been dealing with this internal friction. Now the beauty is, you and I come here and we make up this place called Madison Hills Christian Church. And we come here every week, and we have our relationships outside of this Sunday morning service where we're building into each other, we're learning each other, we're learning what it means to follow this guy, Jesus. So we have some promises, and we're sorting some stuff out. So this could be a conversation starter or an opportunity to get into someone's life and say, let me tell you about some options you have, or how I'm sorting some stuff out. And one of the options we have, and if you've been around church for a while, you know this verse. It's a well-quoted verse that says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. You've heard that before? Consider it pure joy. And we get into Bible studies and it's like, what does that mean? I'm in trouble. I've got some junk going on, and you want me to consider it pure joy? But what's often left is how that context develops. Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And then this line is dropped. Let perseverance finish its work. It's James 1:4. Let perseverance finish its work so that you can be mature and complete. Did you catch that phrase? 19 years in the course of time. Let perseverance finish its work. There's no substitute for moving forward simply for the sake of moving forward. Because in the course of time right now, it's difficult. And there's questions. And there's confusion. And it's hard. So there is work to be done just in the fact of moving forward, because you can put one foot in front of the other. And that's some of the stuff we're sorting out. So when you do that, it's actually at work in your life. Perseverance. When things aren't changing, but you're still moving forward. God is doing a work there. Perseverance is finishing its work. Something is happening. It's self-leadership over time. And I see those qualities popping up here all over the place. I have conversations with you, texts, emails, we go out for coffee, and I just hear that dynamic at play in your life, where there's self-leadership and people are taking responsibility for my life, and some stuff's going on, and there's some junk happening, and I'm praying. And you know what? It's been a while, and I don't have a clear answer. There's not a lot of clear direction. It's a little confusing, but I'm continuing to move forward. I'm allowing God to do the work that he can do only when I'm persevering. Madison Hills, you're fantastic at that. We can't lose that quality. Now, story goes on, and this is interesting to me. I don't know if it'll be interesting to you. There's a couple of lines that her husband Elkanah drops, and one of them I think he just knocks it out of the park, and we're going to get to that in just a second. The other one, I don't know. I feel like he drops the ball a little bit. So they're struggling with this, and they're having this conversation, and then Elkanah, I don't know if this is like a dude thing, or if this is more like a cultural thing. And I know there's a cultural nuance there, but we read it in English. So when I read it, I'm like, but there's a little difficulty going on with Hannah. And he comes in, he drops this line, he says, aren't I more important to you than what's happening? I don't know. Gals, how do you hear that? You got a guy comes alongside of you and he's like, I know that's going on, but aren't I more important than what's happening? I think he dropped the ball on that one. So he comes back and he saves it. It's an epic save. So the story goes on. He makes a phenomenal save with this guy, with this gal. But here's the deal. I think he's also giving her a gift that is often absent in people's life. And if you and I can give this gift to someone else, especially someone in our own house, I think it just nurtures every single relationship that's threaded through your home. And it's the gift of individuality. Now, some of you may be sitting there thinking, what do you mean by that? I was in a counseling session, nothing very serious. I'm actually asked to be able to use this. And we're sitting there and we're across the table, and this individual's telling me about this endeavor that his teenage child wants to get involved in. And the guy knows it's a great opportunity. The wife's not convinced, and neither is the child. The child's like, I get it. I can learn responsibility. I can learn the value of hardship and the beauty of hard work and training in this other dynamic that I feel that I'm wired for. So how about I go this other direction? And the guy's not hearing it. So he's getting a little heated and self-frustrated in that moment, recounting this story and a dialogue he had with his daughter. And I just call a timeout and I'm like, have you ever considered, based on everything you're telling me, have you ever considered her individuality? And he says, her what? Her what? And maybe that's what you're thinking right now. What? And individuality is simply who you are. And who you are in relation to other people. And we need both dynamics. We need a dynamic where the people in your life can appreciate you. And you're dependent upon them and interdependent with them and vice versa. And you need them, but also you can't get lost. You can't get lost in a relationship. Because if you get lost, you're going to feel it. And there's going to be a void. There's going to be a vacuum there. And sometimes that will come out in ways that it shouldn't come out. And it's going to be filled in ways that it shouldn't feel. And it's going to create tension and arguments and conflict and difficulty in the relationship. But a respect for who the people you do life with is integral. This is super important. And Elkanah, Hannah's husband, gives her this beautiful gift. He's talking with her, and he goes up to do this thing that they do every single year. Hannah has had a baby, and the child is still nursing. So Elkanah comes in, he was like, hey, I'm going to do the thing. You going with me or not? You have those conversations with your family, hey, I'm going out, you're going with me or whatever. So it's one of those deals, but it's a custom that they're doing. And she says, actually, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until the child weans. Now, don't go to the next slide. I'm going to wait until the child weans. And then Elkanah just knocks this out of the park. And I want you to hear what the text is saying. I don't want you to go into left field and think we're saying something we're not saying. But this is so beautiful to me. And I've seen this at play. And when I see this at play, this is what's happening when relationships are fortified and people feel valued and nurtured. And it takes a relationship to a whole nother level. And it's a gift you can give. It may take some rethinking and rewiring in your understanding. It may take some hard moves or for you to back off or for you to step up at times. But you can give this gift of individuality. So here's what Elkanah says. He looks at this lady and he says, do what seems best to you. Is that amazing or what? It's as if he's fully aware of what she's been through. He gets it. And he gets her. And he knows she has input and a perspective on this that maybe he doesn't have. So when she says, I'm not going, I'm going to wait, that makes so much sense to him. So he says, you know what? Do what seems best to you, because I bet you know best in this context. Is that amazing or what? And the people that you do life with that are most important to you, when you're able to look at them and give them value by saying, I understand that you have a perspective on this. I understand that you may have something to say that I've never thought of or considered or maybe couldn't. Let's do what seems best to you in this experience. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So Michelle, I saw this firsthand. When Michelle told me that we were going to have a child, I was like, okay, that's great, fantastic. So we go do this thing, and she tells me it's going to be a boy, and I'm like, yes, I get all excited. But I get really excited. I don't know if this is weird or what, but I'd seen these TV shows, these movies about the guy who goes into the delivery room. So he puts on these scrubs and then the hat and all that. And then I saw that there were some scrubs that says, I'm the dad. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to get some of those, put the things over the shoes and all that and go in there, just be in the mix, And I've heard some stories that maybe I don't want to be in there the whole time, so I have to sort that out and all this. So go in there, and I'm like, that's going to be awesome. I want to do that. I'm going to get a pair of black scrubs, says I'm the dad, and I go in there. And then she tells me, she says, actually, I don't think I want to give birth at a hospital. I want to give birth at home. And I'm like, people do that? I'm like, how do you get the doctor? Doctors don't come to your house anymore. That was a long time ago. They don't do that. And she was like telling me these things about a doula and midwives and birthing coaches and bringing in swimming pools and putting them in the living room. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What's happening here? And then she starts talking to me about the reasoning behind it. And she's telling me information that I didn't even know there was access to. And I'm listening, and she's telling me why she wants to do this for the child and why she wants to do this for her body. And I'm listening, I'm thinking, but have you seen these scrubs? Like, if you could get a look at these, you're going to change your mind. And I'm walking through this, and we have multiple conversations. And then over time, she convinces me. And I'm like, you know what? I think this is your call. And I think I'm going to come alongside of you and support you with this. And let's do what seems best to you in this context. So it come time for Sophie to roll around, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Put me in, coach. What happens here? And she's walking me through, and I'm like, but do we need somebody or what? She was like, no, I think you and I can do it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I don't know why, but my first thought was, she was like, you're going to catch the baby. And I'm like, my first thought is there any are you going to have to pull? Like, do you pull? I don't know why. That was one of my first thoughts. Do you pull? And then she was like, no, read this. And I kid you not, I'm not exaggerating any of this. Talk to her afterward. She tosses me this little emergency child delivery manual that's like 10 pages. She's in the bedroom. She just tosses it to me, and I'm opening it. I'm reading. One of the first things it says is, do not pull the child. So I'm like, must be a common question. I don't know. So things go down, and I tell you, that urge is there. Like, when things start happening, you're like, well, let me help, and that's not what you should do. So we do this whole dynamic, and it's over, and it went extremely well, and I'm like, you knew exactly what you were talking about. What a gift you can give to somebody. And I hope that none of that makes sense in some way to you, like that story. Because I'm not telling you the story to show that that's the right way to do it. I'm telling you that story because that was the right way for Michelle and I to do it. And if it sounds a little crazy or off, or even if you disagree with it, that's good. Because that's the point. You need to do some stuff in your family with the people you're doing life with that makes sense to you all. And to outsiders, that's crazy. It's confusing. What? Why would you do that? That's irrelevant. They're doing that because it makes sense. It's what's best for them. You know the people you live with. What a beautiful gift you can give someone. The gift of individuality. We talk about that a lot, actually. There's a verse in Philippians, and we reference this as one of our key verses, where it says, everyone, each of you should look not only to your own interests, but to the interests of others. And that's my favorite translation. But just being technical for a second, if you do a deep dive into this study, you see that there's actually not a specific Greek word that we translate into interest. There's a void there, which leads some commentators and some scholars to simply write the word things. And when I hear that, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, because in some way, when I read it, when David Green reads it, look not only to your own interests, but to the interests of others. I read that and I say, okay, well, interests is great, but it does seem a little limiting. You're just interested in it, or that's something you like. Well, that's good. But if you bring in the word things, each of you should look not only to the things of your own life, but the things of others. Well, that's opening. That's a lot. That's just you. That's just who you are. And I live with you. And I do life with you. And I've realized, oh, you've got a great eye for this. Let's do what seems best to you. That's powerful. And you can give that gift today. So the story wraps up in Hannah. Gosh, strong woman, loyal, commitment, fantastic. So she had actually pledged this child to God. And it's a story, and you don't have to get caught up and read a 21st century worldview into an ancient context. So we look at the ancient context and try to make some sense out of it for our 21st century world. So if there's any nuances there that are troubling to you, please reach out to me and we can talk through them. We can work through some of the biblical nuances, if you will. But this story starts with Hannah praying to God. And God gives her a child. But in the prayer, Hannah said, God, if you give me a child, I'll dedicate this child to you. So when the story comes full circle, it's at the end of chapter 1. Well, the child's weaned. So she gives the child to God, not in a sacrifice. But she dedicates the child to God for temple service. And that's where the child goes and lives and grows and develops. She's true to her word. That's amazing. That takes some self-leadership right there. And I feel that there's a nuance there that's maybe applicable to us, because we don't do that anymore. There's not even a need for it. So the contexts are hard. But when she says, I will now give him over to the Lord, what a beautiful follow through. And some of you, you know my story, and this isn't all about me today. This is about you. And this is a segue to tell this story, elevate you and what's going on here. Some of you know my story, and I became a dad when I was a senior in high school. And I reflect on that. I reflect on it from multiple angles. And I see different dynamics and details. And the older I get, some of the details of that hang around and haunt me. And some of the details I've worked through and I feel at peace with. And every so often, I just have a little bit of a struggling day and recalling all of the experiences over time. And it's refreshing to work through it once again. But I remember when I first started working through this, I was just sprawled out, drenched in tears and worry and fear. And there was a lady who was with me, and we were having a conversation, and I was talking about all the difficulties that are going to arise and how this is going to play out, and in public view and all of this, and what is even the next step here. And this lady was like, we're going to get through this. And doesn't that seem like a tame thing? She said, we're going to get through this. And it's going to be okay. And I don't know, that may sound flippant to you, but I know this lady, and I've known her now for 46 years. And the way she says, it's going to be okay, is so stinking comforting. It's as if when she says, it's going to be okay, it reminds me that there's another option. And you know as well as I do, when you're in the heat of something that's really hard to handle, you lose sight that there's other options. And you need someone in your life who can remind you there's other options. So when this lady says, it's going to be okay, I just have a flood of memories of how she was with me every day through this, because she was simply my mom. She was devoted to me in that way. And I feel that there's a layer of that where she knew I wanted to be involved in ministry, and now I have this hiccup. And how do you sort that out? So there was this nuance where I read this story and I feel that she was like giving me to God and help sorting through this in his ways and with his time in a way that makes sense, not just from our perspective, but from his perspective. And man, that's a lesson for the world, isn't it? A world that is so quick and eager to judge and condemn. But to hear someone else say there's another option and we can get through this in the course of time. We can work this out even if it takes the next 19 years to do so. It's one reason, I promise I'm almost done. We got about 25 minutes left. I had to do that so I don't cry. I think it's one reason that as a pastor, I have this unapologetic willingness to meet every single person exactly where they are. And I don't care where that is. And then when I look at them, I don't see where they are. I see the potential of where they could be. Because someone told me there was another option. And that we'll get through this. And it'll be okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mom. I stand right here today because of that right there. Thank you. This reminds me of 2 Corinthians 1. And you've got some people in your life. They need you. They need that gift of individuality. They need this gospel message that you have. And you've been through some junk. You've been through some stuff. And every now and then you're reminded of the details of that. And it swells up and it hurts. And you've got some regret and wishes. And man, that's okay. Because Paul says there's a God who comforts us. And he comforts us not just so that we feel better, but so that we learn the art of comforting other people, just like we've learned to be comforted. Isn't that amazing? So this morning, with this idea of self-leadership and leading over time, you learn how to be comforted by this beautiful God no matter what's going on in your life. And then over time, you learn how to pass that on and extend it to other people, and you meet them where they are. And then you see where they could be because of God's message and God's ways working themselves out in their lives. That's a beautiful gift you can give. And it's a day like today that reminds us of that. God, we thank you. We thank you for the strong women of the Bible like Hannah, who after one chapter and then a brief prayer, she just fades away in this story of Samuel. And maybe that's how it is or should or could be for a lot of us. We come into someone's life. We do your good work. We offer some comfort because we know what it's like to receive comfort from you. We offer some wisdom because the wisdom we've received from you. We help people sort some stuff out because of how you've helped us sort it out. And then we fade away. God, thank you for how you're working all of this together. May this be a reminder that no matter what's going on right now, and maybe it's in the course of a time season for some of us, it's been a while. It's been 19 years, but you're still at work. You're still doing stuff in our lives. You're still using us, and you want to use us to move your purposes forward. Father, we thank you for that. And we thank you for the strong women here at Madison Hills who reflect Hannah, reflect her perseverance, and they teach us what it's like to be faithful to you and allow perseverance to finish its work. God, there's so much good stuff happening here, and it's because of you. And we thank you for that. And as always, we praise you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.